Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Sunday Night Live. I'm your host, Pierre Quinn, and here on Sunday Night Live, we as leaders come to huddle, we come to engage, we come to be refreshed so that we can get back into the game and elevate our leadership for the rest of the week. And I want to thank you for taking some time out of your schedule. If you're hanging out with us live or watching the replay of this, thanks for taking time out of your schedule to check in and hang out with us on Sunday Night Live. I want you to do a couple of things. Hop in the comment section if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn. Feel free to check in with us. Even if you're watching the replay of this, go ahead and check in. I get all of those comments. They come through, the notifications come through of the people that watch. I also want to invite you to go ahead and hit that share button. Or if you're watching the replay of this, just take the link and drop it in somebody else's inbox or send them a text message, because we want to be the type of leaders that elevate the leaders around us. That's really a core definition of leadership. It's not just what you're doing for your organization, but it's how you're prepping those around you to elevate what they're doing as well. I'm excited about this conversation because this is all about engagement, or this disengagement that we've been suffering from in our organizations really long before COVID. COVID is just one of the factors that has increase these feelings of disengagement. But employee disengagement, team disengagement, staff disengagement has been a topic of a conversation for a very, very, very long time. And we're going to bring that topic to us here on Sunday Night Live. So we're coming down to the end of the year, and I can't quite think off the top of my head about how many weeks we got left in the year. But I know some of us are just really looking forward to the end of the year. We're looking forward to vacation. We're looking forward to holidays. We're looking forward to taking time off. We're looking forward to disconnecting, not thinking about work for several weeks. And yeah, that's usually what happens this time of the year. The challenge, though, is when we start the new year. And speaking of new year, a couple of weeks ago, we did 4 nights to clarity. We're going to do something really special for our leaders at the beginning of the year. We're going to do it for that first week of July. For a week, we're going to have a series for our leaders. It's not going to be 4 nights to clarity. We're going to do it a little bit earlier in the day, probably around lunchtime, this leadership series to start off our year. So be on the lookout for that. But for a lot of us, we've taken the time off, we've taken the vacation time at the end of the year, and then we start the new year, and we're just still not ready, still not engaged. Some of us still don't want to be there. It's the drudgery of work life, and we're still trying to figure out just how to get through it. Or if you're leading a team of people, you're trying to figure out how do I get my people charged and ready to do the work. So let's talk about this engagement thing, or this disengagement challenge that we're facing in our organization. Again, we're coming down to the end of the year. We're recording this in November of 2021. And some of us, what we're dealing with right now is really this cyclical disengagement that comes from deadlines. Anybody got any deadlines that they're dealing with? And seasons. And depending on your industry. So, if you're in fundraising of any capacity, we're pushing to try to get those end of the year gifts. If you're in higher education, you're pushing. I know some higher education institutions are out for the break, for the holiday, for the year already. Some, you have that little Thanksgiving break, and then you come back for a few more weeks, and then you do finals. We're trying to just push and make it through to the end of year reports, end of year auditing. It's a part that this happens every single year. This happens at the end of every single year. You have this drudgery, or this feeling that we're pouring so much energy and so much intention of just trying to get through to the end of the year. And sometimes we lose people or lose contact, lose touch with each other in the process. And that leads to some disengagement. So it's not just the cyclical part that we're dealing with that happens every single year. We're still in many ways dealing with this COVID plus factor of disengagement, that our connections have been lost. We're reframing ways ways to work all over again, in person, hybrid, what that looks like. And a lot of our organizations, we still really haven't figured it out yet. Yeah, we got Zoom calls or Microsoft Teams, but we still don't have a clear framework on how we're supposed to do the work and do the work well. And some of us are responding by attempting just to do more work and thinking that it's just all going to fix itself. And that isn't happening. It's actually heightening our disengagement. So we got the cyclical nature, this cyclical nature. It happens every single year as a part of disengagement. We have the COVID factor that's a part of this disengagement that we're feeling. And then we have what is common to the workforce in general is employees really asking, do I belong? Do I belong here? Is there really a place for me here? Is my organization aware of my work? Am I supported in my growth? Is there an acceptance of me? Do people even care? Does my team or does my boss or does the organization even care about the work that I'm putting in? And these questions have been looming for a long time. So when you look at these three factors, and certainly we could put more here, but when you look at these three things, this cyclical nature that happens at the end of every year, every major deadline, this COVID factor of dealing with how that has really upended our world, and then the sense of belonging, all of these meet together and they're causing huge disengagement. Huge disengagement. Like it's a thing. It's a huge thing that's taken over many of our conversations, and we're trying to figure out, how do I get my team engaged? How do I get my team energized? How do I get my team recommitted to the work? And how do we make sense of everything that's going on? And we're trying to wrestle with this disengagement factor. And I know for many organizations over the last year or two, we've been quiet. Leadership has been quiet. We're just saying, hey, I know it's tough. Let's just continue to do the work. Let me tell you why that's a problem. That's a problem because let's talk about money. So when you look at the Society of Human Resource Management, it's called SHRM for short. Society of Human Resource Management says when an employee leaves an organization, it's costly. So let's say you're paying an employee $60K a year, and because an employee is disengaged, they quit or you have to fire them because they're not performing the way that they should be. Well, it's going to take you 6 to 9 months of that salary to recruit, to hire, to train and prep the new employee to get up to speed. So they're contributing at the rate or at the degree of the employee that left the organization because they quit or you had to fire them. So it's going to take, if someone leaves the organization for whatever reason, and you're paying them $60,000 a year, it's going to take you $45,000 on top of their $60K a year salary to get them up to speed to fit into the culture and do the job. So if someone quits or if you fire them, it really costs the organization over $100,000. And that's if you're paying them $60,000 a year, even more so if the salary is higher. So that's why this disengagement factor is so important, because we're wrestling now with retention. And some of us are really struggling with this. I have an executive coaching client and we're working through some challenges with their organization. And what's happening here is that this organization is bleeding staff. Staff is just running for the doors. And the reason why they're running for the doors is because at the executive level, they're not acknowledging, they're not supporting, they're not having those who have been with the organization through these last tumultuous 2 or 3 years. They're not saying, hey, we value you and respect you and we're going to support you. They're literally saying, hey, we just need you to do more work to cover for the people who are leaving the organization. So it's leading to more disengagement, and it's leading to a greater cost to the organization to hopefully recruit more people that are committed to this mission. It's not just replacing the employee, though, not just replacing the staff member. There's an organization called Gallup, and Gallup says disengagement costs somewhere around, what's the number I have here? Somewhere around $3,400 for every $10,000 you pay an employee. So if you're paying this same employee, they stay at the organization, you're paying them $60,000 a year, but they're not engaged. $60,000 a year, and they're looking for other jobs on company time. $60,000 a year, and they don't feel like they're connected to their team. $60,000 a year, and their productivity is just really in the tank. You're losing about $20K in value to the organization. So you're paying them $60,000, but you're only really getting $40,000 of work out of them because they are not engaged. So think about that. That's just for one employee that you're paying $60,000 a year. Think about it. If you have a team of 10 or a team of 50 or a team of 100, how much does disengagement actually cost the organization? How much does it cost? I was having this conversation with one of my clients on Thursday. I was at their executive retreat, and we went through some similar statistics. And I tell people all the time, as we're planning these leadership development, team building, these training sessions, that the amount that you invest in spending a day with me, say you spent $20K for a day for us to hang out as an executive team or a leadership team. Say you spent $20K for that day. If the staff, if the organization, if the leaders are still talking about and implementing the practices 3 months later, 6 months later, how much did you save because of that investment of $20K a day for that one day? You say, oh, that's steep to pay for someone to come in and have these conversations and do these things with us. But think about how much you're losing from disengagement. Think about how much you're losing. Yeah, you're typing little emails saying, hey, we really need to be committed to the work, but you got a disengaged workforce. And how much is it really costing? And this conversation is not just about paid staff. It's not just about paid staff. We can leverage this conversation in other areas. I know it's primarily paid staff, but think about your board members. Say you have a board for your organization and your board is disengaged. How much is that costing your organization as it relates to time, energy, and resources? Say you have a volunteer staff and your volunteer staff is disengaged. How much is that costing your organization? How much is that impeding what you're actually able to do? Say you have a group of community partners and your community partners are not engaged with your organization. How much is that getting in the way of the work that your organization is called to do because we don't have the engagement factor? It's costing us dearly. And ignoring it or telling people, hey, you just got to work harder, or it's just like that, or even blaming other people for not being committed, blaming other people for wanting to look for the exit because they don't feel like they're in a place that is aware and supportive of what they bring. That is indicative of bad leadership. You got to check yourself and say, hey, how am I contributing to this? So I want to give you some things to consider as it relates to how do we respond to this disengagement that's happening in our organizations. Ignoring it is not working. Ignoring it is not working. You know what else is not working? Having an awards banquet, pizza party, or some huge thing once a year. That's not helping. Having this, or we have this huge Christmas party once a year. We have this huge award ceremony once a year. We have this huge thing once a year that we're supposed to do to keep our staff engaged. The practices of engagement are kind of like showering, kind of like taking a shower. You got to do it frequently. You can't just say, hey, I took a shower on Monday. That's going to last me for the rest of the week. No, it's going to cause some problems with the people around you. These engagement practices have to not just be add-ons, but actually built into the way that we do work, built into the culture of our organization. So I want to give you a few things to do. You could start this the last few weeks of the year, but continue these practices all the way into 2022. All right, so to fight against disengagement, one of the things that we want to really leverage, we really want to leverage one-on-one conversations. We want to leverage one-on-one conversations. And here's what I mean by one-on-one conversations. You want to leverage you as a leader checking in with your people one-on-one, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And I'm not talking about checking in to see how the project is going, checking in to see if they're doing their job. I'm talking about a check-in that is related to who they are and what they're dealing with. It's okay for you to know that they have a kid in soccer. It's okay for you to know that they are wrestling with a parent that they're providing health care for, they're looking to support. It's okay for you to know that they just bought a house and they're moving from one part of the city to another. It's okay for you to know that. And in fact, in some ways, you should know that because all of those factors impact their work. All of those factors impact their work. And it's what they think about as they're attempting to do the work, as they get a phone call or a text message from that loved one, as they're trying to figure out what the next step or stage in. And it's really helpful to know that my leader cares that I'm a whole person and not just a contributor to this project. So I want to encourage you one-on-one check-ins. Yes, you got to do some check-ins about project updates. You got to do check-ins about status reports. You got to do check-ins about assessments. You have to do those because you have to do the work. But you can also include in that, hey, how are you doing? Seriously, what's going on? Seriously. Hey, I'm thinking about you. Hey, I'm wishing you all the best. Hey, how can I support you? That will go a long way. In fact, depending on what research study you're looking at, employees they value one-on-one check-ins more than some of the other things that we do. More than, hey, let's pull them all in for huge so they can sit at the table and be a part of this huge decision that we're making at the company. Yeah, they value that. They value a one-on-one check-in higher than that. So leverage that one-on-one conversation with your team. Okay, another one that I have down here is you got to leverage the storytelling. You have to leverage story time. You got to leverage story time. And here's what I mean by story time in your organization to push back against disengagement. Where are the times where you as a team come together and talk about how much we've been successful? And I'm not just talking about the KPIs. I'm not just talking about the key performance indicators, which are necessary to the work that we do, but the KPIs don't always tell the story. They don't tell the full story. The KPIs may show that we've interacted with this many customers and we've brought in this many sales or we launched this many products or projects, but it doesn't show all the factors, all the issues that we had to wrestle with, all the challenges that we had to overcome in order to bring those projects to reality and to satisfy those customers. So how often can we bring our team together? Is it once a week? Is it once a month? Is it once a quarter? Hey, let's chat about what are our successes? What are the wins that we've experienced? What can we celebrate together? Because the things that we celebrate, we're telling the people around us that those are important. The things that we celebrate, we're telling people around us that those things are important. And you can't hold your celebrations to the end of year party. You can't hold your celebrations to the Christmas banquet. You can't hold all of your celebrations to the award ceremony because even when you do that, there are still some people who would never be acknowledged because the work that they do might not fit into the award framework, the award rubric. So as a team, you have to, as a leader, you got to bring your team together periodically and say, hey, let's celebrate. Let's celebrate our admin staff for holding it down. Let's celebrate our IT staff. Let's celebrate our HR staff. Let's hear the stories of what they've been doing to be successful during these times. And that storytelling time will go a long way in fighting back against disengagement. Another factor that I have here is called value talk. And I'm calling it value talk to fight against disengagement. Here's why this is so important. Because in organizational life, no matter what organization that you're in, corporate, nonprofit, faith-based, you're a part of a volunteer, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Eagle Scouts, whatever it is, 4-H, junior achievement, whatever the organization is, there is a fair amount of conversation that we have, depending on your organization, about random things connected to other people's lives. Okay, let me just put it a totally different way. We're very good at spilling tea, sipping tea, and gossiping. We're just very good at it. Even if you don't participate in it, it's something that occurs in all of our organizations. We spill tea, we sip tea, we gossip. And we have this culture, this negativity bias. We're always trying to catch people as a default doing something wrong so that it can be a topic of conversation, that we can bring it up and we can share with other people. It's this negativity bias that says, hey, always be on the lookout for someone doing something that they weren't supposed to do. But what if we framed this value talk? What if we trained our people and supported this idea? I want you to catch your colleague living by our values. I want you to catch your colleague living by our principles. So when we come together and have our conversations, hey, we do storytelling and we do wins. We're going to take a time to say, hey, when did you see your colleague living by the values of the organization? Yeah, overheard, if you're in-person environment, I overheard Pierre on the phone with a really tough customer. And I could tell it was tough, but he kept his cool and he helped the customer to the best of his ability, and he found a resolution. And I heard that as he was on the phone. And I just want to celebrate Pierre for valuing being patient and supportive to our customers in these crazy times. That when we start to say, hey, we're going to catch each other doing good stuff, we're going to catch each other living by our values, it shifts the entire culture of the organization. So not only does it say we're affirming, supporting, and being aware of the work that our colleagues are doing, it's also fostering our connections, and it's also giving us a little bit of pain relief or tension relief as we're punching toward these deadlines. So what would it be like for you to create a Slack channel or a way of sending in little notes, or maybe even anonymous notes? I caught my colleague living by our values, and I want to share that. I want to acknowledge that. Now, I know I said, hey, we can't wait for the holiday parties to have these connections and these conversations, but we got a party. We got a party. Every now and then, we got to get together and go paintballing or throw axes or go to a rage room or have a paint party or go to the roller coaster park or something, or go hang out and eat. We have to have these interactions outside of Zoom, traditional Zoom calls, outside of traditional workspaces, because there's something real about the psychology of spaces. Something so real about the psychology of spaces, and that it's hard sometimes for us to connect and engage in deep transformative connections inside of our workspace. That's why we have parties, because we want people to let their hair down and to be more connected. That's why we go out to eat. That's why we take teams off site. That's why we go on vacation spots and retreats, because we know the value of being in a different atmosphere, of being in a different environment. So you got to ask yourself, how much are we partying as an organization? How much do we have festivities and times where we can get together and engage each other? We got to have some fun in games. I know our work is super serious and that's important, but celebratory times, festive times go a long way into upping the engagement factor. All right, so I got two more here, and we're having this conversation about how do we push back against disengagement. It's real because it's a cyclical disengagement as we come down to the end of the year. COVID has really increased our feelings of disengagement because we're wrestling with life and work in the light of everything that's going on. And then also this looming question of belonging that everyone has. Do I belong here? Are people aware of what I do? Do they support me? Do they value what I'm contributing to the organization? As we're wrestling with all these things, it's leading to disengagement, varying intensities of disengagement, and we want to fight back. We want to fight back against it. All right, so two more here, and I want to make sure there's space for you to see this. We need facilitated convos. We need facilitated conversations. Here's what I mean by that. There's a difference between keynotes, seminars, workshops, and panel discussions. And I'm just telling you, in this season of time for your organization, in this season of life for your organization, I know we have these huge conferences and they're cool, and we have these keynote speakers and that's great. And we have these seminars and that's great. And we have these panel discussions and that's great. But I'm telling you, in a time period in our culture across the country where people are feeling deeply disengaged and disconnected, it is not always best practices to have what is called professional development, where someone is just talking to your group or your team for 45 minutes. Just talking to them for 45 minutes. What we need more of are facilitated conversations. And let me tell you what a facilitated conversation is. We put this into the bucket of workshop. A facilitated conversation, a facilitated workshop is we come together and we engage, we interact, we talk, we debate, we discuss, we ideate, we pull all of our feelings and thoughts together, and we share widely. I just came off an engagement with a client a couple of days ago. It was an offsite for their executive leadership team. And as we're doing the planning, they said, hey, please don't give us, you got a 90-minute slot. Please do not just talk for 90 minutes. We need something that's deeply interactive. We want to have some fun elements. We want to think deeply together. We want to exchange of ideas. Can you facilitate that? Because we want to value the time that we have together all in the same room. During this time in your organization, with everything that is going on, we need more workshop, more facilitated conversation, more interaction. Hey, what do you think? Hey, this is an idea. Hey, let's put some stuff on the board. Hey, let's talk in small groups and bring it back to the larger group, because that's going to deepen the engagement factor and fight against this feeling of disengagement. And I'm just telling you from experience over the past year or so, working with organizations across industries, it's good to have these one-on-one conversations. It's good to come together and do some storytelling, celebrating our wins. It's good to set up a framework of catching each other, living by our values. It's good to party and hang out and eat together. And it's also good to have a facilitated conversation around some skill or idea that you want your team to learn. But the core reason is to have a scenario where you're deeply interacting with each other. Deeply interacting with each other. Here's the last one to push back against this disengagement. You as a leader, you need a mirror. And here's what I mean by the leader's mirror. Here's what I mean by this leader's mirror concept. One-on-one storytelling, value talk, party, facilitated conversations, leader's mirror. Here's what I mean by that. I mean, as a leader, you need to look at yourself. And even if this means standing in front of a mirror, I need you to look at yourself and applaud yourself. Applaud yourself for doing a great job this year. Things have been going absolutely crazy, and you have worked your very best to hold it together. You got to look in the mirror, look at yourself and say, hey, Pierre, you've done a great job this year. You need to look in the mirror, and in the storytelling that you're going to do with your team, you need to look in the mirror and acknowledge, hey, Pierre, this is how you were able to win or succeed this year. These are the things that you should be proud of. These are the milestones that you have achieved. And you just say those things to yourself. Hey, Pierre, this is how you have grown this year. And these are the challenges that you have faced. And this is how you're different to the people around you, to your team. Have that conversation with yourself. Let me tell you why. Because it's very difficult to lead your team in a storytelling exercise about how we've been winning as an organization if you don't know as an individual, or you're not comfortable as an individual at celebrating the wins. It's hard to have a conversation around catching people living by our values if you're not celebrating how you're, as a leader, as an individual leader, living by those values. It's really hard to applaud people when you're not necessarily comfortable with applauding yourself or receiving applause and affirmation from other people. So as a leader, you need to look in the mirror and understand, depending on the tension in your organization, it might not come from the people above you. I know you want it to. I know you want the C-suite to acknowledge you and the work that your team is doing. They might be unwilling, unable, or unaware, but you still have to do it. You still have to be in a position where you're practicing that self-talk and self-leadership and saying to yourself, this year has been crazy and you've been doing a good job of holding it down. Or this year has been our best year ever and you've been doing a good job of holding it down. And you've been doing for your team the best that you could possibly do. As a leader, for the growth, for the safety, for the development of your team, you need to be able to look in the mirror and practice that positive self-talk. And the more that you practice that positive self-talk, it becomes a model when you're coaching your team to greater success. So engagement is a real thing, not just because it's the end of the year and all of these deadlines are here. That is a factor. Well, I said engagement. I meant disengagement is a real thing because of the season and the deadlines. It's a real thing because of the COVID pressures. It's a real thing because we're trying to figure out where we belong and if the organization really values us. And it's leading to, hey, I'm feeling disconnected. But if you follow these, and there's more that we can add to this, but if you follow the value of one-on-ones, the value of story time with your team, the value of connecting around catching each other, living by values, the value of having a party, a celebration, the value of facilitated conversations, and the value of looking in the mirror and encouraging yourself with positive self-talk as a leader, you will go a very long way in pushing back against the feelings of disengagement in your organization. Hey, that's all we have for this edition of Sunday Night Live. And I want to encourage you to lead. I want to encourage you to elevate your leadership this week. I know you've been doing a good job. I know you've been pushing hard. I know you've been wrestling with some really huge problems and some really huge challenges and giving it your all. But I want to encourage you, look in that mirror, celebrate yourself. I want to encourage you, take your time off, take your break, and make sure you recharge so that you can get back into the game and lead with greater courage and greater clarity. I know that you will, and I've enjoyed hanging out with you on this edition of Sunday Night Live. So take care, and God bless.